Sometimes, when I'm on my usual walk around, which you'll find at the end of all my vids, I often stop for a moment and think about how lucky I am as a father when maybe I share a moment with my two little boys. Now, as you know, the last 4 or 5 minutes of every single watch review I've ever done, I take the watch I'm reviewing and showcase it throughout a day out. Now, these walkarounds were really designed to show you, my lovely loyal viewers, and that'll be all 10 of you, the watch that I am reviewing on the wrist throughout the course of that day. And quite often it's on a family day out. When I'm filming the watch on those days out, it's inevitable that I do stop and think about how lucky I am to be a father. Now, I mean, I could go into a whole realm of sentimental conversation about time and about enjoying every single moment in time with them. Right there and then, before the dreaded day comes when they're not actually children anymore. To live and love for that moment in time. So what better watch to review on Father's Day here in the United Kingdom than that of the Horizon by Italian microbrand Fathers, a watch whose very ethos was created with the fact that we exist in those moments that become our experiences, that become our story, and that become our time. Anyway, from a technical point of view too, the Horizon has some very unique features to it. Today we're taking the macro lens to those unique features of the Fathers Horizon, including an intellectually protected bezel made of steel with a ceramic mold insert, and also a monogram dial with oil press treatment, but also delving more into the meaning behind this microbrand. And stick around as I take the Fathers Horizon to the wonderful and often underrated city of Sunderland, Tyne and Wear in the northeast of England, where I spent much of my childhood, including the wonderful Pension Monument, in my usual walk around at the end of my vid. As ever, it's great to have you here. Let's take a quick look at the specification of the Fathers Horizon, all in the next 90 seconds. Now, Fathers is an Italian brand founded by Luigi Generali and Matteo Francina, two names I hope are really pronounced well, both young entrepreneurs, both fathers, and both who are bound by a deep friendship and shared passion for watchmaking. And they hope that fathers create watches with a unique message, inviting us to look at time not as a flow of events, but to value it by giving importance to each individual moment that defines it. They have one range, the Horizon, which is Italian design and Swiss built. And the reason that range is called Horizon is because one day, co-founder Luigi was watching the sea from the balcony of his house with his son, and they shared a very personal moment when his son pointed to that imaginary line that was the horizon. Again, brand values, meaning and an ethos I personally feel you can only find with microbrands. And in my hand today is the Procida, presumably being named after the island of Procida, which is one of the Flegriham Islands off the coast of Naples in southern Italy. Now, other colourways are also available and categorised by themes: Professional Elegance, Seafarer, Silver Rose, Eternal Legacy, Outdoor Adventure, Cocktail Attire, Anniversary, and this the Procida, inspired by nautical roots, island charm, and the typical atmosphere of Italian cinema apparently. And just to reiterate what was said in a bonkers and wild 90-second spec, the Horizon Procida measures in at 11.9mm thick, 40mm in diameter, 48mm lug to lug, 20mm at the lug, with a silver 316L stainless steel bracelet tapering down to 18mm at the clasp. Now the case is a 316L stainless steel case with a mixture of very fine AAA satin finish and polished finishings. It sports that very fine AAA satin finish at the sides from lug to lug, with a polished finish on these chamfered edges that start at the end of the lug and go into the bezel. It's a fairly classic and typical case design you'd find on a diver's watch, and as you can see from lug to lug, there is some curvature on the case too, and that case does extend out here to form these crown guards. And that crown, incidentally, here at 3 PM is a screw down crown, signatured with the logo, and just note that the Horizon is water resistant up to 200 meters. Now onto that dial, and the main feature of this, the Horizon, is without a doubt the monogram dial with oil press embossing, the pattern of which really complements the logo, which is of the letter H, and that H symbolises outstretched arms, one hand within another between father and son. Now I have to say that the dial for me is simply stunning and is a feature on every single Horizon colourway. It really does speak luxury on your wrist. You have baton hour markers that taper down a touch, with this Procida colourway showcasing a blue outline on those battens, with the exception of the side pointing to the centre of that dial. Double baton at 12 o'clock and a small cutout baton at 6 o'clock do show the date complication. For me, I kinda wish they extended that 6 o'clock baton outline to surround that date complication, just for something different perhaps, but not least because a personal preference of mine is that a diver feels more like a solid diver when it's either no date or all the hour indices are very prominent. And surrounding those bold hour markers is a very, dare I say, thin chapter ring in blue with numerals every 5 minutes and seconds and microseconds markers printed onto that chapter ring. The hour and minute hands are arrow hands, green arrows set on skeleton blue holders, and the seconds hand is also in green. You've got the Fathers logo just underneath the 12 o'clock and the product name in red above the 6 o'clock with the water resistant spec. And I think that red just adds a little bit of a secondary colour into this colourway that just lifts it a little bit and gives it a little bit more of a diver's sporty feel. And overall, that dial is an absolute looker for me, and it sits underneath this flat sapphire with anti-reflective coating, which is 3.2mm thick. Now the dial for me, albeit a very attractive dial and a very luxury dial, doesn't quite steal the show. I know you'll probably think I'm crazy because that monograph dial with oil press embossing is such a wonderful key part of this watch, but man alive, this bezel. It's 120 clicks unidirectional, 316L stainless steel bezel with a ceramic insert in single mold. So basically, that stainless steel bezel is one molded piece, with essentially a gap in it to slot in this blue ceramic element to that bezel. From a design aesthetics, it looks ridiculously cool. You've got numerals on the stainless steel every 5 minutes, with an inverted triangle in green quite prominent at the 0 position, the point of which is slotted into that steel mold. Again, detail like that adding more and more to the luxury feel of this watch. The ceramic element of that dial sports small squares at every 5 minutes with slightly larger squares at the 15, 30 and 45 minutes markers. Again, the blue and the green really working well together and complementing the colour density of those two colours on the dial. The steel has a satin finish, however you'll find that the scalloped edges of the outer bezel are polished, and yes, the bezel looks amazing, perhaps though from a practical perspective, the scalloped edging doesn't really allow for much of a decent grip, and that crown guard here means that to rotate the bezel with this thumb at 8 o'clock and the forefinger at 2 makes it a little slippy, and actually overall it's a fairly tough bezel to rotate. But there's absolutely no denying that this looks absolutely amazing. And it even looks better when it and the dial is all lit up. The Lume is C3 Superluminova, and I think you'll agree that what you can see really does speak for itself. The bracelet is 316L stainless steel with that very fine AAA satin finish to complement the case and the bezel. The bracelet actually has a nice solid feel to it. It's 20mm at the lug and tapers down to 18mm at the clasp, which is signatured with the Fathers logo, and this clasp has in particular 4 micro adjustment holes in it too. The movement is a Swiss-made automatic Celita SW200, 28,800 beats per hour, 26 joules, hacking seconds, and a very modest 36-hour power reserve, and it's contained in what is very much a screwed down caseback, which is engraved with the same pattern you'll find on the dial and the Fathers logo in the middle. It showcases a lot of specification around it, and I must say overall the caseback does very much have that premium feel to it. On my 7.5-inch wrist, again it wears as you'd expect a diver that places itself on somewhat the luxury end of the scale to wear. Very well and looking great. The 40mm case doesn't feel at all too small despite what is a fairly large two-tone bezel and a smallish dial, and the crown guards really makes this feel more like a 41 or 42 case-size watch. This colourway in particular looks very sporty on the wrist with the blue and the green, the two-tone bezel and those very legible indices, and the satin finish really works well with the high polished scalloped edging of the bezel, which catches the light really well. The dial in this colour I think blends in nicely to that satin finishing too. No problems whatsoever with comfortability too. It's weighty as you'd imagine with all that steel coming in at 173 grams, but a weight you'd always expect when you slip on a diver's watch. In terms of price, the Procida comes in at €1,310, which is about 1,435 USD or 1,120 UK pounds sterling. A cheaper option of the Procida with rubber strap you can find at €50 cheaper, that's about $55 or $40 in pound sterling respectively. So well worth going for that steel bracelet in my opinion if you were going to invest best part of 1,500 USD into a watch, and that price is the same for whatever colourway you get in the Horizon range. Overall, from a design and build point of view, this is probably up there with one of the nicer watches I've ever reviewed. The build feels like a $1,500 diver, and that design of the dial will certainly make you feel like it's money well worth spent. It's got those two very unique elements to the watch. The intellectually protected bezel made of steel with a single ceramic mold insert, and also that monogram dial with the oil press treatment, which offers you very much a talking point if anyone does say, "Oh, that's a cool watch." And that also makes me think, whenever I'm wearing a watch, and 9 times out of 10 it's a microbrand, and someone pointed out, I tend to firstly talk about the story behind the meaning of that microbrand. And I know it bores the recipient to smithereens, and they'd probably wish they never asked, or that I'd suffered some sort of cardiac arrest. But I tell them anyway. The story could be a new start micro that is inspired by jellyfish designs, or a well-established American micro you can only purchase after 15 years sat on a waiting list, or it could be a watch inspired by where somebody grew up. Either way, it's the first thing I talk about when I'm wearing a micro, rather than, "Oh, it has a cool bezel that rotates," or say something like, "Yeah, it's 50mm case diameter, but it looks rather small in my opinion on my wrist," or something else quite technical. But if someone asks me about this, the Fathers Horizon, I don't know, I'm not sure I'd say anything about the brand. I'd probably in this case say something technical, like perhaps the bezel made of steel with a single ceramic mold insert. I don't know. The feeling behind this brand in particular, living and loving the moments you share with your children. The values and ethos behind this brand which very much resonate with me. The fact that the watch represents special moments that become our experiences, special moments that become our story, and special moments that become our time. Yeah, I think I'll keep that just for me. See you later.
After 310 yards, turn right. stop because I might look at the edge. Can't send that. In about 5 and you can already see like 20 pieces of glass. This is too nice. Skip. I said the tiniest sip in my life. Just like this on a sip. I got it. Guys, there's a whole front.
Happy Father's Day, everybody.